Good evening and welcome to all who are tuning in to our panel this evening during Black History Month to hear from three remarkable young people who are making change in history now. I'm Danielle McDonald, CEO of the Ottawa Public Library, and I'm delighted to be here tonight. First, it is important to acknowledge that the land where most of us are gathering this evening is the traditional unceded territory of the Algonquin Anishinaabe people. And this year marks the 26th anniversary of Black History Month. That makes 26 years of spotlighting Black Canadians' contributions to their communities and to all of Canadian culture and society. The theme that the library chose this year to celebrate Black History Month is Canadian Black History in the Making. This theme is truly apt for this evening's event. Tonight, we are so pleased to host this conversation with inspiring young Black Canadians who will talk about their courageous leadership projects and the challenges they have faced, all before the age of 20. The library seeks ways to build community and to foster change, inclusiveness, and learning through varied programs and resources. Visit the OPL's website main page to find out about other exciting activities lined up for Black History Month. Find as well lists of books, ebooks, and audiobooks to borrow and enjoy during Black History Month. I would like to congratulate the youth panel members for their optimism, for their resilience, and for participating in tonight's discussion. It is my pleasure to pass you over to the moderator for this panel discussion, Biba Tinga. Biba will introduce the panelists. So thank you and have an excellent evening. Now let the panel begin.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Ms. McDonald. Thank you. I would like to begin by thanking the Ottawa Public Library for providing this platform to all of us to celebrate Canadian Black history. And today, it's my honor and my pleasure to have three remarkable young Black youth that I'm very proud to introduce to you. I know I can read your bios, but I've decided to do it differently. It's always better when you hear something from the person who is going through it, from your own mouth, in your own words. So I'm gonna ask all of you, one by one, to introduce yourself to our audience today. So good evening, everyone, and thanks for joining us. I'm going to start with you, Sarah. Tell us about you. Tell us who you are, Tell us what you want us to know about you today. Introduce yourself to our audience. Laura?
Hi. Sorry, I heard Sarah, so I wasn't sure if you meant Awa or me. So my name is Laura. Thank you so much for the introduction. My name is Laura Doyle-Péan. I am a 21-year-old non-binary person living in Quebec, where I was born. I'm currently calling in from Tiohtià:ke, where I am for work. And I'm very, very happy to be part of this panel tonight. It is very special to take place in this activity and share this space with you all, especially during Black History Month, because I know how important this month is. I was part of the organizing team in Quebec City for 2 years when I was in Cégep, and I know how much labor goes into organizing it. And I also know the impact it has, because our history is so often erased or taken away from us. So creating these spaces is very important work, and I want to thank you for that. So as I said, I'm calling in from Tiohtià:ke. I'm just going to introduce myself a bit. So my roots are in Haiti and in Ireland. So I'm biracial. I am currently a student at McGill Law, but I also have a degree in communication and cinema from Cégep. I'm a poet. I'm interested in the way that art can serve as a tool for social change and the role that artists can play in social transformation. I also published a book, which I'm going to talk a bit more later. and I'm passionate about social justice. And so besides the work with Black History Month, I've also been involved in a lot of organizing around migrant justice issues with WUSC, which I'm also going to present later, but which is the World University Services of Canada. I'm also involved in climate justice organizing, and I've been doing feminist and other sort of social justice oriented work in the past years. So I'm very happy to be sharing this with you tonight.
Thank you, Laura. So now the next person that I'm going to here ask to introduce herself is Odobi. And I'm going to call her Warrior Odobi. And the reason why I add the word warrior before, I want her to tell us, why am I calling you Warrior Odobi? And I want you to tell us who you are, where are you joining us from, and tell us about your life journey.
Thank you, Biba. I just wanted to say thank you to Ms. Biba for having me on this panel and for giving me the opportunity to speak.
Can you speak louder, please? Can you speak louder? Okay.
Thank you for giving me the opportunity, Ms. Biba and Ottawa Public Library, for allowing me to share my story. My name is Odobi. I am a 16-year-old high school student. I was born in Venezuela and I now live in Canada. I have sickle cell disease. For those of you who don't know, sickle cell disease, or as most people call it, sickle cell anemia, is a chronic illness and a genetic condition which causes your red blood cells to sickle, and when that happens, it restricts and limits your red blood cells from flowing and reaching certain blood vessels in your body, which can cause immense pain and sometimes the loss of certain body parts. It's a very, sickle cell anemia is a very, very painful disease, and it's not something that is easy to live with. I wanted to start up my business as a way to bring more awareness for sickle cell, because it is known to a lot of people, but it's not well known. I wanted to start my business as a way to help make it more known so that we can donate money to researchers to help find a cure and more treatments for sickle cell disease.
Thank you, Odobi. Now, our Hanan, tell us about yourself. Tell us who you are, what you're passionate about, and what you've been up to.
Hello, everyone. My name is Awa Hanan Diang. I'm 20 years old. And just to start, I'll talk a little bit about my background. So I was born in New York, but I grew up in Canada and in Montreal specifically. So I'm French Canadian, and my ethnic roots are in Senegal and Niger. So, a blend of different things that I've come to learn to mix, and it's really affected my interests and things I'm passionate about, namely an organization that I founded when I was 18 years old called The Woke Folk, which was really inspired by how I think that education is so important and something that whether you want to pursue a career that needs a degree or not, it's just something that can be really empowering for young women to have access to. But in most countries in the global south, that's just not a reality. It's not something that's really invested in. So I really wanted to start my own initiative so I can make my individual impact towards educational equity in the world. And I'm also super passionate about gender equality and healthcare. I know that right now healthcare is on all our minds because of the current pandemic, but healthcare has been a site for violence for people who are marginalized for a very long time, especially people who are non-binary or people of color and women. So I'm involved in an organization called Medical Herstory that works towards undoing the stigmas that affect the healthcare that people experience, the poor healthcare that people experience when they're in marginalized bodies, And I'm also involved in an academic journal at my university, University of Toronto, that publishes a lot of academic work on the subject.
Thank you very much. Woof, a lot of information, a lot of things. And like, I knew that you were gonna tell it in your own words. So our audience now knows that they have a poet, they have a writer, they have an educator, they have social justice leaders, funders, entrepreneurs. So we have all of this today in this panel, and I'm very excited. So we're gonna go into details in all this, and then we're gonna hear more about how you accomplish all this at such a young age, because usually when we talk about, when we think about young people, when by the age you're 20, yes, you're thinking about, staying in school and getting an education, but you're also thinking about doing other things that are more fun, but you get involved in causes that are really serious. So I want to hear more about it. But before I move to that, Laura, I want to start again with you. You introduce yourself as non-binary. Do you just want to share more to explain to us what it really means, Okay.
Sure. Thank you so much for that question. So being non-binary means basically that I don't identify either as a woman or as a man. And so the pronouns I use are they and them, and in French I use il or I, which are non-gendered pronouns that were created by the community. And yeah, it's basically, it comes out of a reflection about gender and sex and how those two things are not the same thing. So there is the sex that you're assigned at birth, but then gender is how you feel about yourself, how you think about yourself, and how you want the world to also perceive you. And I've spent many years wondering which gender fit me. And I have a hard time grasping how you identify to a gender. And I think that's why I identify as non-binary, because there's no checklist, it's not like, oh, I like this sort of music, I like this color, thus I fit in this category. There are so many ways to identify and to live your experience in the gender that you choose for yourself, the gender that you're in. And thinking about that, I realized that neither the category of men or the category of women was a category that fit for myself. And so this is why I present as non-binary.
Okay. Thank you. I get it. And if just before we move, so if I understand well, it's because you don't fit in a specific gender. And then can I say that, is it seen sometimes, by the majority of people as a kind of a protest, from gender expectations, because we expect you to fit in one gender and you just want to say no, I don't identify to any of them. Can we say that is a kind of a protest or not?
I wouldn't say that for myself it's a form of protest. Okay. There might be some people who identify as non-binary and that part was part of their reflection. Non-binary is an umbrella term, as we call it. So there are different subcategories between that term, under that term, to express yourself. Some people that sometimes will feel more like a gender and sometimes will feel more like another gender. So that's being gender fluid. Other people that don't associate with gender itself, which I think is the category that I fit under. And so there are various experiences underneath that umbrella and various pathways that can lead to reflection about this and to identifying yourself as non-binary.
Perfect. Okay. Thank you. Get it. So I'm gonna move to Odobi now. So you talked about yourself that the reason why I called you a sickle cell warrior is because you live with a chronic condition that is very painful. So every day you fight, against the pain, and you are a young entrepreneur and you are going to high school full time. And so you managed to create your business and say that it's because you wanted to raise awareness and also, support research. So I understand all that. So I would like for you to tell us how has life has been for you, to live all this time up to 16 years old, with this, condition, and how did you manage to get involved, in a project, like create a business and go to school at the same time? How has it been for you?
I'd say it's something that hasn't been easy. It's not really easy having a chronic illness and having to multitask and juggle everything at your life at the same time. You can be perfectly fine 1 minute and next thing you know, you're in the hospital. Keeping up with school, it's been hard, but it's not impossible. It's something that I know that if I just take it one day at a time, I can do it and make it and reach my goal. For
your project, how do you manage it? So then when you go to school, how do you work? How do you make it work? How do you manage your business? Do you get help from family members, or do you do everything on your own?
no. I definitely say I'd get help. I get help from my mom. She helps me manage the business. She helps with the accounting stuff. I do the designing, the art portion of my business, and she helps more with the mathematical and accounting type of management type of stuff. The way I manage it is I just try and I organize myself. I give myself a list, or I write down what I need to do for the day, or for what I need to do for my business, or for what I need to do for school. And I try and do my best to complete them and make sure I don't stress myself out about it. Because the thing is with sickle cell, if I stress myself out too much, then that can cause a pain crisis, which is what we don't want. So, I try to do it little by little, but make sure I complete what I need to do.
Good. That's remarkable. Awa Hanan, so you talked about your organizations, right? So I want to know, how did that happen? How did you get involved? How did you just decide that you wanted to create this organization and fund education for young girls, all the way in Africa? How did that happen? Tell us the story behind it.
Well, I guess it's a pretty long story. I guess it would have to start in high school. So
Short.
yes, I'll make it short, of course. So it started in high school. Our high school always asked students to, complete volunteer hours just to get us engaged within our community. And often when they talked about community, they mean locally. So in Montreal, different organizations, but they gave opportunities to students at some point to do a cultural exchange in Senegal. And I did not attend that cultural exchange because I felt as though the exchange wasn't really reciprocal for both communities, in the sense that I feel like the students who were going were gaining a lot by going to this beautiful country with a beautiful culture and a rich history. I didn't really see what the community itself was gaining. And as someone who is of Senegalese descent, I felt like it was kind of engaging in a lot of like voluntaristic practices that I didn't like. So I was trying, after I finished high school, I was trying to figure out, I knew that I really loved volunteering, that I wanted to continue it on a meaningful basis. And I knew that remedying these like social inequalities are important for me, but it can feel so overwhelming because they're so ingrained and they're so big. So I guess I knew that education was important to me, that I wanted to help people in Senegal or in other African countries, because you don't even have to go that far to find people who are struggling. Even within my own family, people struggle to receive an education. So I knew that the need was there. And I just thought that the Woke Folk would be a good way to start out, because I had people in my community, my friends, who were interested in helping me and who were really motivated to do some community grassroots fundraising to fund the educations of these girls. And that's what we did throughout CEGEP. We did a bunch of different fundraising events like a thrift shop, garage sales, and we collaborated with a local business that sold chocolate. And we did all of these little things that created community in Montreal between our volunteers, but also helped us fund the educations of these young girls.
Yeah, I'm curious to know about like what's the budget that you need to fund this girl. It must be very expensive to fund the education.
Not really. For the most, I think I would say like the average price that the education costs in a Western African country where most of our students are located would be maybe like $200 a year. So that includes materials, school fees. If they have like a meal plan at their school, they can get snacks and stuff. For the most part, that covers everything. So that's why we were able through these small grassroots fundraising initiatives to fund the girls for 2 years. Yeah.
Wow, great. Okay, thank you. Laura, I want to ask you, so you are a writer, you publish your book, you know, and the title of your book is Cœur Yo-Yo. Tell us about the story. Like, did you just wake up one day and said, I'm going to write this book? And then the style of your book is written as a journal, right? So tell us about it. Tell us, how did this happen?
Oh, having some mic issues. So I did not wake up one day and tell myself I'm going to write a book. What happened is that I was in CEGEP. I was starting CEGEP. And my partner at the time and I were taking a break. We had been together for at least a year, almost a year. And our relationship was slowly coming to an end. And in CEGEP, I was in a school where I didn't know many people. There was my partner, there was maybe 1 or 2 other students, but most of my friends from high school were in that other school. So in that first year of CEGEP, I was feeling very isolated. I was also in a new apartment. And so a lot of the things that I was used to and the things that I had known in my life were away. And writing has always been part of my life. I'm going to tell the library story because I know Suzanne likes it. But when I was a kid, I used to go to the library with my mother at least 2 times per week, sometimes 3 times. And I would fill my own card. I would fill half of my mother's card, and I would fill half of my brother's card with books that I wanted to read. And then we would come back, and my mother would apologize to the librarian saying, I'm telling you, I'm not forcing them to read. They just really, really like it. They do other things as well. So reading and writing and books have always surrounded me. And so when I found myself in that moment in CEGEP, where I was struggling to deal with a lot of emotions, there was the relationship breakdown, but there was also a lot of political issues around the world that were also taking a toll on my mental health. And I needed to find a way to understand first. I think it was the understanding part that was the hardest part, understand how I was feeling and do something with those feelings. And so I turned to paper, and at least it was at first it was only to be able to have a conversation with my partner after that break that we were having. But when I sat down in front of the page, I did not write a reflection. I just wrote poetry without knowing it. And then I shared it with my best friend and my father, who encouraged me to do something with that text. And three years later, it became a book. So it's now out. It's a book that talks about healing, that talks about relationships, obviously, but also how art can help you deal through loneliness, deal through grief, and how you can come out stronger out of these relationships, and what you take away from them as well. Wow. So it's about human connections overall.
Yeah, wonderful story. Yeah, okay. Well, thanks for sharing that. And I love the library story, you know, and it shows that, you know, if we show our kids, you know, at an early age, then they're gonna have the love for letters, and then they end up writing a book before the age of 20. That's wonderful. We are gonna continue the discussion, but I wanted to know, I'm gonna ask you, Odobe, because I really wanna get back to, again, to the reason why you focus, you know, on raising awareness, you know, about your condition, the condition that you have. Is there a specific reason why it's important for you? Because even your business name is Sickle Cell Apparel. So why is it important for you to have the word sickle cell even in the name of your business?
There you go. It's important because, like as I said before, sickle cell isn't a well-known disease. It is something that
Why? Why? Can you tell me why it's not a well-known disease, especially in Canada? Do you know?
not a lot of people in Canada have it. You know, where you'd find sickle cell disease is mostly in countries or places where it's mostly populated with a lot of Black people, like Africa or Guyana. You know, that's where you'd mostly find it. It's not somewhere you'd find in something you'd find in America or Canada. So it's known, but it's not well known. And I wanted to put sickle cell in the name of my business to bring awareness so that when people hear it, they'll wonder, what is it? Like, what's sickle cell? You know, they'll look it up, you know, so not only am I bringing more awareness to it, I'm helping people, it's helping to bring more awareness to the disease. And, you know, like people can help donate to researchers to help find more treatments for it. It's something where if, say for example, someone's wearing a t-shirt, you know, random strangers wearing one of the t-shirts, they'll see sickle cell about it, and they can ask the person, oh, what is sickle cell? Why are you wearing that? You know, and the person wearing it can explain it to them, or they can go tell them to look it up, or go to our website and they can look up any information about sickle cell and know more about it, so that one day we can have a cure. And like I said before, more treatment for it, because it's something that is a very, very painful illness that I myself, and I know a lot of other people with sickle cell would just, you know, like to one day be able to have that cure.
Yeah, I hear it. And you're right, you know, because the majority of people who are affected by this genetic condition are from African descent, you know, and for the Mediterranean or Saudi Arabia. But we have about 6,000 people living with sickle cell disease in Canada. So, and you're doing good by raising awareness, you know. We need to know that people are living with this condition. Thank you. Awa Hanan, you were talking about the girls, and I would like to hear more. Do you get to meet them? Do you get to know the girl you're funding? And is there a reason why you only fund girls?
Do I get to meet them? Unfortunately, not, you know, because we have girls at this point in 5 different countries, and I haven't really traveled in the last 2 years. I haven't gotten to meet the girls directly, but I did know some of the girls through connections, because the way I found my students was asking my people I knew, like family members, oh, do you know anyone in the community who may be in need of a scholarship? And for example, there's one person in Senegal that we're funding. Her name is Bibata, and she was already connected to the family in some way. So I knew who she was before I even started the Woke Folk. And also, do the scholarship, I get to know the girls a little bit more. So the girls I didn't know initially, for example, we have a girl in Togo. Her name is Joyce Stella, and she's like really amazing. And she's every time, well, ever since I've known her, she's been at the top of her class, and she's just a really sweet girl. And I get amazing letters from her parents about how the scholarship is helping them. And I know that for me, it's not a lot, but it's in the sense that we only fund 5 students as of now, but in the future, I would like to maybe go and visit, because I think it's so important to like build those connections and get to know who I'm funding right now. So because right now we only have 5 students, I hope in the future I'll be able to get to meet them in person.
Good, thank you. Laura, so you mentioned at the beginning about other projects that you are involved in. Do you want to say more about it? Okay.
So the main project I wanted to talk about tonight is my work with WUSC, the World University Services of Canada, which is an organization that I also discovered in CEGEP in the same moment that I was in when I wrote the book. I was looking to make friends at the CEGEP because I didn't know anyone, as I was saying earlier. And one day it was probably the second week of school or so, and I was walking around campus and I saw a poster that said lunch and learn, come hear about WUSC. And I was like, what's WUSC? You know, when you see it that way, you don't really know what it's about. But I went to the event and I learned about this organization, the World University Services of Canada, that helps students, mostly in university settings, but they were starting out in CEGEP, and we were one of the first CEGEP where they started their work. So they help students raise funds to sponsor refugee students through the Student Refugee Program and help them resettle in Canada. And so what we did in the club when I joined was that we fundraised $23,000 to be able to sponsor one student. And that student arrived to Canada and came to our CEGEP. And then during all the first year of that person's arrival in Canada, we were helping him with his studies, connecting him with people, showing him like how are interviews conducted in Canada, or how is the educational system different here from the educational system that he was used to. And sort of just building community, I think, is the main part as well, because a lot of these students that are coming through the Student Refugee Program don't know many people in Canada. Some of them don't know anyone. Some of them might have friends who were sponsored in the past, and so they have a few connections, but not necessarily in the town where they are being sponsored and where they're going to school. And so we help them, we create different social events so that they can connect with people in the community and really feel that they are part of this community as well. And the goal, a bit like the woke folk, is to help people have access to education. These are students that are passionate about their studies, but unfortunately, due to various circumstances, all of their stories are different, but we're forced to migrate, or some of them have been born in refugee camps and don't have access to higher education, because even like secondary and elementary education is very hard to access in these settings. And so these are students that work super hard and are super passionate, and by helping them resettle in Canada, we're not only allowing them to pursue their studies, but also to get permanent residency. So after a few years, they're able to apply for citizenship. And so this gives them more stability, and a lot of them sponsor their family after. So it also helps a very larger community. And it's always so amazing to connect with them and build community along the way.
Wow, remarkable. That's really good, really good. Thank you. For our audience watching us today, we would like to hear from you. If you have questions, for Awa Hanan, Odobi, or Laura, please drop them in the chat or write them in the Q&A. And at the end of the session, we're going to take a couple of minutes, and I'm going to make sure that I read your question to them. Thank you. So now you are all sharing all these projects like this, and you're telling us, and you've done an excellent job, but you make it seem so easy. And I know it's not. I know that you faced some challenges, and you had to overcome them. And it's, I would like to know, I would like to hear, what are the challenges that you face, when you were like for Our Hanan, when you were, funding the Walk Folk, or when, I don't know, is it in fundraising, or is it in finding the girls, or is it in, just tell us, if there were any, and how did you overcome that challenge?
I would say there are two main challenges in running the Woke Folk. One of them is fundraising, because it is a grassroots organization with an international mission. So a lot of grants, for example, federal grants, it's hard to qualify for them because our mission isn't local. And so we rely in that sense on a lot of like fundraising and a little like bake sales or little events like that, like I mentioned before. And that's not really possible now because of the pandemic and because I've changed schools, I'm in a new community, I'm in a new city. So I'm really trying to find my bearings already in this whole new sense. So I'm trying to kind of like reimagine how I'll fund the Woke Folk going forward. And another, I think, a hard thing is communication, because the girls I fund are so far. Sometimes they don't have access to typical ways of communication that I would use, like email isn't always as easy to get in contact with them through those channels. So that was something that I found really hard. So sometimes I had a hard time knowing how the girls were doing. As I mentioned during like one of our discussions previously, there was at one point a girl who was living in Niger, and Niger has it's quite many geopolitical tensions right now, and there was unfortunately like a terrorist issue that made her community unsafe. So I didn't even know if she was in school. I didn't know if she was okay. So I had to go through different channels to get into contact with her and know that she was placed in another school and that she was continuing on with her education. And those type of things, because there are so many barriers in that sense, can make it hard for me to, I just as someone who's running like a small organization, to keep into contact with everyone, but I do my best. And yeah, those are two challenges. Yeah.
Wow, remarkable. So I can imagine, how difficult it is, because in some part of the world they don't have access to internet the way we do, So we can send an email, send a text, and do everything, but they do not have that. So yes, Orobi, do you want to tell us like when you started Sickle Cell Apparent, what were the challenges that you faced, if there were any, and how did you overcome that?
Let's see. I'd say the challenges were trying to get the right amount of funding I'd say trying to find the right amount of funding to find clothes, to find people to print on it, to get everything on the website, to get a website, to get everything approved for the business. It's a lot of, starting a business isn't something easy. It's not something where you can just find someone to print on a t-shirt for you and bam, you have a business. There's a lot of things and stuff that you have to qualify for before actually launching and starting a business, such as making sure you have a logo that no one can copyright from or isn't similar to another one's logo. Make sure that when you're printing out new items or clothing that you aren't stealing from anyone. Make sure you have your website up and running. There's a lot of things that I'd say you'd have to go through for the challenges of, doing a business. I'd say another challenge when I first started Sickle Cell Apparel was helping it get more well-known. Starting a small business like mine that isn't popular yet and well-known is a little bit difficult because, it's something where you need help with. For me, I'd say one of the challenges for me personally was trying to keep my creative ideas flowing and trying to get everything done on time. And
you have so many creative ideas, because I got a t-shirt, I got a bunny for you. So I saw a question here, somebody asking how can we a question for you, you know, can you please provide information on how we can get your merchandise? So I think the information is going to be dropped there in the chat. You have the link to all the websites to see what this younger, wonderful Black youth, you know, are doing in the world. So you can see that. And because you design everything yourself, right? So because you design your own logo and you think about what can be useful for people. And I remember one item that, you know, I saw was the vitamin water bottle. That was incredible to have the idea, you know. Oh, you have it. Yes. Please show us that. So it's a water bottle with a vitamin pill box that you can have, you know, it's stuck into it. So if you're gonna go for a run or you're going to school, and I like the fact that it's especially good for you because you spend your day in school and you have to take your meds. So you have both, you have the water and the meds, and you're selling it. Bravo. This is, you see, you created a business, but you also put products that are really useful for you to make your life easier. It was amazing. I had to share that. Yeah. Okay, so we are celebrating Canadian Black History Month, okay? And I have to ask you this question, and I want everyone to take the time and tell me in their own word, how does it feel to be a Black Canadian? Who wants to start? Do you want to go first, Laura? Okay.
I think it's an answer that requires multiple part answers, a question that requires a multiple part answer. And that is also very personal. I don't know if Awa and Odobi will say different things, probably. But for me, as someone who is biracial and who is also non-binary, so part of the LGBTQ community, I think being a Black person in Canada is looking for identity and looking for a sense of belonging. Because as I was saying at the beginning of the panel, Black history and LGBTQ history is not something that is taught, is not something that is present in history books, is not something that is talked about in schools. And so we have to do all the digging by ourselves to sort of see ourselves and know that we have a place in this history and that we have been making it and that we are still making it and that we belong. And I think the lack of representation in the medias and in books and in history is something that can have a big toll on someone's mental health. I know for myself, it has for a long time. And I think it also brings a feeling of responsibility, because if we're not creating these events and if we're not making these panels and if we're not pushing our schools for better history curriculums and if we're not organizing events during Black History Month or asking our schools to recognize it, then when are we ever going to learn about ourselves? So it comes with this feeling of responsibility for ourselves and for the people that come after us. But at the same time, I think it's not all negative, because it makes it so that I feel so much pride and inspiration of being part of Black communities in Canada, because there are so many people that are doing wonderful things. Awa, Adobi, and you, Biba, are part of these people. But it is probably driven by that sense of responsibility towards each other, but it brings so much inspiration to be part of this vibrant community that has a wonderful history of organizing and resisting and making change. So yes, it brings a lot of pride for me. Yeah.
Okay, got it. Awa, Hanan?
I think I really agree with what Laura said about how being Black comes with a big sense of responsibility. You know, I think back to like last week, I was contacted by the Black Student Union executives at my former CEGEP, and they're talking about, oh, the school isn't really listening to us. We want to do this Black history programming, and they're just kind of ignoring us. What are your tips? Can you help us? And then we were able to arrange a meeting, and whilst as the meeting, like some administrators at my school were like, why do you care? You're not a student here anymore. And I was just kind of convey that it's not about me enjoying these programmings as a student. It's more about the fact that what legacy are we leaving? What are we teaching the Black students who are there? How will they feel? Like, I don't care just about myself. I care about the multiple generations of Black students who will be at my CEGEP going forward. So of course, even if I'm not at the school anymore, it's important to me that the Black History Month programming be like actually good and complex and show how Black people are more than just these two figures that we're always that we always highlight. The two same figures, I think, is also an issue within Black history that we need to diversify who we talk about. So I think, yes, responsibility is one thing. And in terms of how it feels to be a Black Canadian nowadays, I think one thing is hypervisibility. You feel hypervisible, but you also feel invisible, in the sense that we see Black people in the media oftentimes, but because of just the way that the media works and who controls the media, the representation isn't very positive. It's often stereotypical. And that can also harm your mental health, in the sense that you don't really see yourself reflected in the media. Like, I'm an awkward Black girl, for example. Like, I have I'm very introverted. I, like people would say that I don't smile a lot, and like all of these things that you wouldn't necessarily associate to Black people, but you never see that in the media. So then you're like, oh, am I weird? Am I not normal? Or what's the issue here? Why can't I just see myself? And then look at shows and you see all of these white people, these different like white people who are exuberant, who are timid, who have this this complexity, but you don't see it with other communities. So yeah, I guess like even though you could turn on the TV and see a Black character, for example, for the most part, it's really like reducing the experience to one uniform format that isn't true for most Black people.
Okay, Odobi, how does it feel for you, especially living with a chronic condition that you said is not well known? How do you feel? How do you live that?
I agree with everything that Laura and Awa said. There's a lot of positive but also negative sides to being a Black person in Canada, or just a person of color in general. I also agree with Awa said with the hyper visibility. Like, sometimes there'll be times where my ideas for something may not be approved of or heard, or sometimes you can get excluded from things. Sometimes people don't want to count you in because of this image that society has Black people ranked as, they see us as sometimes aggressive or uncooperative in some situations, or people who don't want to cooperate with the situation, or just aggressive, rude, violent. That's what society has portrayed people of color nowadays. And I think that that's very tough, and it's hard because, like what Laura said, it can really hurt someone's mental health and physical health. It's something that can really take a toll on you. It's something that I think we can, as a society, work one day at a time to not see people of color in that way. We have a lot to offer. We have a lot of things that we can do and a lot to offer to society. And so I think that, maybe one day in the future, there'll be a time where some people don't have to be scared about going outside, or even walking to the gas station to get gas, or just being anywhere outside in general without having to be afraid of their life just because of their skin color.
Wow, thank you. Well, guess what? Today, it has, we said, history in the making. by you sitting here and sharing, your experiences and your life journey, and sharing how it feels for you to be, Black youth in Canada. Well, you've been educating us, you've been educating the whole community. So I think it's a positive thing that we're having this discussion today. You know how they say in Africa, when the child is wise, the child can even teach the adult something. So today we're learning from you, how you feel, and you are the future of this country. So I'm so honored to hear all of you talking today. So I can talk with you for hours, but you know what? We're almost running out of time. So we're gonna go to the question, and answer time, because I see some question here. I'm gonna go there and read them and then see if we can answer all of them or at least some of them. Laura, someone is asking where we can find your book. So I think we did drop the link here in the chat. If you've registered, you receive also, the link in the email that was reminding you of the webinar. But you can also, if you have it, Laura, so you can drop it there in the chat, please. Or do you want to tell them where they can find it?
Yes, so I think a link to the Ottawa Library website was put in the chat, because you can order it there to borrow it. But I will also put a link to the leslibraires.ca page, which is the website for independent bookstores. And it's possible to order either a physical or a digital copy of the book there if you want to buy it. So I'm going to put this in the chat for the Zoom, and I think someone might be able to put it on Facebook as well after.
Yeah. This question is for Awa. Awa, are you looking to expand to other countries, or are you going to remain in those 5 countries? Can you tell us, in which countries you are at this time, if people know well, or otherwise they will check the map to see? And also, are you looking to expand to other countries?
Currently, the countries we have are Senegal, Togo, Niger, Zambia, and Cote d'Ivoire. And I would be happy to expand to other countries. I don't know if I'm thinking of going like outside of the African continent, but of course, like if I can fund more girls and more students, it's a goal of the organization. So yes. So if you know someone, maybe if you have direct contact with someone who may be in need of a scholarship and you think that they'd be a good fit for the woke folk, please let me know.
Good. So Awa is calling here for volunteers, right? You're looking for. So I think also you can also drop the link, and we did also, in the chat, and they can connect with you on the website. This question goes to Warrior Odobi. Somebody is asking you here, have you ever experienced a situation where people discredit your pain or disease, like at school or at the hospital?
Yes. There has been times because of my sickle cell where I have lost jobs. I remember my first job, I was working at as a busser, and I got sick and I ended up having to be in the hospital for about 2 weeks, and eventually that led to the job place slowly giving me less and less shifts and less hours, until to the point where I didn't have the job anymore. That has happened about 2 times for me with jobs. I'd say that there's also been other times in hospitals where they were afraid to give me the amount of doses that I need, or the amount of morphine that I needed, because it was either too high of a dosage that they would normally give regular patients, or type of pain dosage that they wouldn't give to a regular person in pain. There has also been times where, when I was little, I used to miss school a lot because of how sick I used to get. I'd basically be in the hospital like 1 to 3 times a month, actually, and that really caused a big impact on my learning and my mental health. And my grades. I'd say that because of how much I missed when I was little, I guess I feel like a part of me, I wish that I could get back what I missed, because it's something where I feel like I'm lacking something that I know that I can, if I work hard enough, I'll be able to get back. Because when I missed school in the hospital, I've missed a lot of lessons in math and English, and it really set me back. And, I used to be a grade top A to B student, and my grades were really good. And then, missing school for like a week or two or even longer, really set me back. And I'd say that's something that was really hard for me to climb myself back up to be in the same level with the other students. Sometimes I'd feel like I wasn't working hard enough, so I'd push myself to the point where I'd make myself stress out and end up back in the hospital again. Something I need to do. I'd say that that's what I have been through. But now I'm doing better. I'm in the hospital less and less. I'm working on staying out of the hospital.
Why are
And
you doing better? Is it because you have another treatment option or something happened that changed the course of the disease?
mm, I'd say yes. I Back when I was little, I used to eat non-organic food, like a lot of food with grease in it, or fried food, and that can cause inflammation. If you have when you have sickle cell, if you eat a lot of fried food or something a lot of unhealthy junk food and stuff like that, it can cause a lot of inflammation in our bodies, and it can even cause inflammation in the heart, and it can cause your heart to get bigger. So I'd say I changed my eating.
Okay. Your diet. Okay. Okay. So, it shows that when you listen, to your physician and you eat healthy, it gets better. And I'm so sorry that you have to go through all this. And I have to mention that, it's true that with sickle cell disease, people go through a lot of pain, and those pain crises take you often to the ER, where you need heavy pain medication, right, to stop the pain. And most of the time, people living with sickle cell are stigmatized, and are viewed as drug seekers. So that's what you're trying to explain here. And I'm so sorry that you've been through that. I'm so sorry. But at the same time, I'm really impressed by your courage, and the way you do it, gracefully, and you find time to go to school full time and then and run a business full time. My hat's off for that. So next question. Somebody is asking here, are there people who gave you the inspiration in your life to be as implicated in your community as you are? So yeah, when I come to think of this, all of you are like leaders, you were involved, where did the inspiration came from? I know that like you were mentioning that you saw it because, in your own family, you saw that some people were struggling to have access to education. But do you have anybody who inspired you? I can start with you again, Laura.
Yes, I could name some like big historic figures, such as like Angela Davis or Patrice Cullors from the Black Lives Matter movement, which are both like big inspirations of mine. But I think more personally, it's mostly people in my family and my friends and the people I went to school with. Both my dad and my mom are to people that are very, very involved. My dad is also a writer, so the the writing part comes from there. But besides writing, he has always been a big advocate for social justice, and for like strengthening the social fabric and making sure that people have access to the things they need. And he's very hyperactive, just like myself. So I think being involved in many projects also comes from there. And my mother is a teacher, so she, I've understood the importance of education through her, and I think that's probably why WISC was so appealing to me, because I know how important it is for people to be able to access an education and to access the tools they need to transform their societies and create change around them. So I would name my parents as probably the first initiators, and then as I was saying, people I went to school with that were also doing wonderful projects. I have a lot of friends that like to organize protests, and yeah, and people I've met throughout different events as well, who are also doing this work and who inspire me every day.
Awa, any inspiration who inspires you?
I'd say I really am inspired by everyone I come across oftentimes when it comes in activist circles. My mother, she's involved in a lot of work with sickle cell anemia patients because my brother suffers from sickle cell anemia as well. So I really resonated with a lot of the things that Adobe said today. So thank you for sharing your story, Adobe, first of all. And beyond that, I think that when you're trying to assess issues that affect your community, you really have to take into account your identity and what the experiences you have and what you know, because that's how you'll best be able to help. So I understand, although I have never lived in Senegal or Niger or Western Africa in general, I still have a connection to that space through my parents, and it's really meaningful to me that these issues be solved. So just my connection to my parents and my culture to that space has inspired me to get involved. So my upbringing in and of itself was something that really pushed me to found the woke folk as well.
Good. Adobe, I'm going to talk to you as a warrior. When you started this business, have you seen any other warrior doing it, or where did you get your inspiration from? Well, who do you look up to?
I'd definitely say I got my inspiration, and someone I really look up to is my mom, because if she has done a lot of things for me, and she's done a lot of stuff and sacrificed a lot of things to get me where I am today. And if it wasn't for my mom, I wouldn't be where I am today, and I really, really appreciate what she does for me. She inspires me. I love her motivation and her drive to do things that she loves. I'd say another thing that inspired me to start Sickle Cell Apparel would be my love for art. Ever since I was little, I've always dreamt about having my own clothing design, clothing brand, or like a store. I even came up with this really weird nickname for a store if I ever did create one, and it was like Fashion Emergency, something that little kid me came up with. I'd say that because of how I wanted to have my own store when I was little, I just never thought that I could do it. But if you push yourself to do something that you want to do it, because it will be hard, but it's not impossible. And it's something that if you take it one day at a time, you'll get there eventually. It's something that I am really proud of everyone who have helped me reach to get where I am today. And my mom, my family, my friends, everyone who's just helped me out in general and who have been there by my side through thick and thin. Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. Amazing. But you know what? I will remember that, the name of your store. And one day I'm sure you're going to have your store. Somebody was asking, how has C19, affected your activities? Because all of you were quite very busy people, out there, and most of your activities were in-person activities, right? So I'm going to start with you because you have a business. Adobe has this C19 pandemic affected your business?
I'd say it has. It definitely has affected my business and definitely a
In
lot
what way?
in the
Can you
world.
tell us how?
Pardon?
I said, can you tell us in what way the pandemic has affected your business?
It affected definitely the shipping of products to get here. You know, we ordered stuff and they don't get here till 3 months later because of the pandemic.
Yeah.
I'd say it definitely affected our audience and our income. It has affected, wow, it's affected a lot of things, but I'd say since we're not like a big business, it hasn't affected much, but it still has affected us at the same time. Since we're an online clothing store, it's something where it affected us bringing in new products, bringing out new stuff for customers, trying to make sure that everything's out on time. So I'd say it definitely affected that.
Okay. Good. The work folk. How has the C19 pandemic affected your organization?
As I mentioned, just like the fundraising, we really have to reimagine it. Have to find a way that doesn't really rely on necessarily in-person activities. So that's certainly one way that COVID-19 has affected the work folk, and COVID-19 is also affecting our scholarship recipients because the virus is spreading and it's affecting their safety. So in that sense, it's the way it's affecting every human being. It's affecting the work folk.
Yeah. Okay. Oh, by the way, Awa, there was a comment for you. Somebody is saying, have you thought of linking up with other Canadian organizations who work, in development projects in Africa? And I think there is something called CUSO, C-U-S-O, for example. It's true. Have you thought about doing that? Maybe to get more support?
I haven't, honestly, because once again, we're a small organization, so we're not really out there, but maybe in the future I do think that collaboration is super important, so I'll consider that. Thank you for that suggestion, whoever put the question in.
Yeah, check in the chat and you can take the name of the organization. So again, I said this is really a very interesting conversation and we can do it for hours and hours, but we're gonna have to wrap up at some point. I would like to ask you if there are any young person like you, teens, looking, I'm pretty sure they have a project, in the mind, like the way you, Adobe, so you were thinking about your business for a long time, or somebody wants to write their own book, or they have a draft in their drawers and they're thinking about, oh, I'm going to be just like Laura, I'm going to publish my book, or I'm going to start my organization. And maybe also the person wants to go to Africa and this time educate, give scholarship for young boys. What will be the advice that you will give them, to get into this type of projects, just any initiative, this one advice that really help you in your project? Can you share it with us today? Awa?
Actually, this advice, I heard it in a forum this weekend and I thought it was like really good advice. When you're getting involved in social justice projects or organizations, if you don't necessarily have to feel the need to be the founder of the initiative. There are so many initiatives, grassroots initiatives that have a really great team that it's small, but they have like a history of working in this cause, and it's really like rooted within the community. So don't be afraid to join that initiative. You don't have to, find everything. It's okay. So that's one thing I'd really suggest. And also, being the founder of something, yes, it's very fulfilling and it's something that comes to a lot of pride, but it can be hard. So I really recommend you as an activist, if you want to get involved, consider just joining an existing organization that's already really involved in their community.
Okay, thank you, Awa. Laura?
I'm going to cheat and I'm going to give a two-part answer.
Yeah, okay.
I think the first one is concerning mental health. We were talking about the feeling of responsibility earlier and how it can feel like you have to do so much because if you don't, no one else will do it. But the truth is that, as Awa was saying, there are organizations and there are people that are already doing work. And so when you're joining a project or starting a project, it's important to put in place strategies so that if at some point someone has less capacity or has to take a break because something happened in their life or has not enough energy, that person or yourself is able to rely on others, and that you're able to have open conversations about how you're feeling, and the amount of energy or the amount of time you're able to put in the project, because the end goal is not to burn you out. Oftentimes these initiatives, whether it is to help people have access to education or find a cure for a disease, are things that take time. So it's not going to be fixed tomorrow. And if you need to rest or if you need to go for a walk today, it doesn't mean that you're not going to be able to reach your goal, you know? So having these conversations, creating space so that people feel comfortable in sharing how they feel, and in taking much more work if they feel like they can take more, and in taking less work when they feel like they have to take less. And the second part, I would say, is to not wait for permission, or not wait for someone to tell you that you're able to do it. If you want to join a project, if you want to start a project, if you want to write a book, just do it. And you can reach out to people who are doing or who have done similar initiatives to exchange. And you're probably going to realize that we all have doubts and we all have moments when we tell ourselves that we're not able to do something. And really, like, it's easy to fall into this idealizing of the people around you that are doing beautiful things, but deep down, we all have our own insecurities. So when you create that room for sharing, and you can understand that your own insecurities are not there to stop you, but are maybe there to help you question the best way to do your project. And then even if they're still there, you have to push through them. So yeah, reaching out to other people to learn from them and exchange your own experience as well.
Thank you very much, and so true. Odobi, this one advice that you will give, because you started a business with all the challenges that you face with your health. So I'm pretty sure you have something strong that you can share with us. What would be this one advice?
I'd say that nothing is impossible. If you have something that you're really passionate about and you really want to pursue as a career in your life, go for it. But don't overwork yourself to get to it. Take it, whatever it is that you want to do, take it one day at a time. Take it piece by piece, and don't stress yourself out about it. Everything takes time. You can't get something right away as much as you wanted to. Everything in this world is time consuming and it will take time. So I'd definitely say that nothing is impossible, but if you want to work towards something that you're really passionate about, do it.
Thank you very much. That's really the best advice you can give them. And coming from you, a warrior, I'm pretty sure you know what you're talking about. Thank you all for joining us today. Thank you for being, so open and sharing your stories and giving us, all this good information that I'm pretty sure that today people have learned so much, and I'm really inspired myself. And I have to tell you, I'm so proud of all of you today. So keep up the good work. I can't wait to see what you're gonna do, in 5 or 10 years from now. I know that we have a lawyer here in the making, and we have somebody here who is working in research and bioethics, right, for Awa. And although you did mention to me that you want to become a graphic designer, and I'm waiting to see that store and that big store. So thank you all. And I want to thank here our audience for joining us tonight. And if you're watching through Instagram, Facebook, thank you for joining us today, and continue to celebrate Black History Month. You know, we have again a lot of activities coming. I will be here again on the next week on the 16th. I'm going to share my own story. So I invite everyone here to come back again and join us. You know, at 7 p.m. on February 16th, we'll be back here for another discussion. Thank you, and have a good night, everybody.